aliens. Today I'm interviewing a viewer, Loup, who had a very close encounter of the third kind. All right, Loup, you want to talk about one of your stranger experiences or your UFO experience you were telling me about?
Sure. Well, I would like to go from the beginning. When I was around 9 or 10 years old, I was on the side of my parents to own a pretty good sized property. And I heard they had a wild almond tree, they call it down here in Florida. And the leaves, in fall, the leaves get real hard. So when the wind blows through them, it like rattles, like a rattlesnake in a way. It's real loud.
I've heard those.
And when the sparrows would fly down and the flocks down here migrate, they would go into the trees. And I always loved birds. I love wildlife, nature. That's why I live in the forest now. But I heard the tree rattle, and I looked up, and I saw this giant balloon. Because in my mind, at 9 or 10 years old, I thought it was a balloon. And when I just stood there, and it actually kind of it came straight over me, but it went on an angle to get to me, and it just hovered over me, and it was maybe 15, 20 feet above my head, and I'm still thinking it's a balloon. And the weirdest thing is, it may not sound like I went to pick up a rock and throw it, and I'll never forget, in my mind, like mind talk, it just went, no! I went, wow. So I ran and got my neighbor to show him the balloon, and that's when I found out that it was a UFO. He said, that's no balloon. And the weird thing is, though, it was shaped like a cake pan. It wasn't tapered off. It wasn't silver. It was like a brassy bronze, and it looked like it had knobs on it, or it wasn't smooth, and it had like yellowish windows.
Wow.
And wow. Yeah, it was really amazing, and it wasn't that big. I talked to my neighbor several times about it. I see him once every 3 years. He still lives next door to my father, but he has dementia pretty bad. But he still, he remembers it. When I talk to him about it, he shakes his head like, yeah, I will never forget that.
How big was it?
I would say, from talking to him, because I was a child at the time, I would say it was like 25, 30 feet, and then it maybe 4 or 5 feet in height.
And how many windows were on it?
I wouldn't know.
About?
I've always wanted to be hypnotized and then draw it, from memory like that. I always thought that would be cool. But it and the weird thing is, it was so low, I thought it was going to hit the telephone wires, and it just barely made it over the telephone wires, and it just went like on an angle over the houses, and people were driving under it. Nobody stopped, and it was just amazing how it just went about its business, and no one really noticed it. I jumped on my bicycle and started following it because I just thought it was amazing. At that time, I still didn't know it was a UFO until I got back, and that's when my neighbor explained to me what he thought it was.
Damn. Did anything happen with that encounter?
No, that's just I always thought that because the encounter I had with my friend maybe 6, 7 years later, maybe this had something to do with it. I don't know. But the encounter I had with my friend was, a group of us always hung out together. We're always doing everything together. And one of the older guys in the group, he was the first one to get his own apartment. And at that time, we had finals at school, and I was living with another family. And so we begged my friend's father. My friend's father was into politics. And I don't want to say what he ran for because of what happened in the story, but he was a politician, and he was a very powerful man. And so we begged him to go, if he would let us go and see Mike's apartment. And so he said, okay, it's 7 o'clock. You've got to be back by 7:30. Now, Mike's apartment was only like 2 blocks away. We could have walked there, but we drove, and it's still daylight. And it was in my truck, but my friend was driving. And when my friend pulled in to Mike's apartment, the strangest thing, it was like a silver flash, is what I remember. Is a silver flash, and then the truck started lifting up off the ground so fast that I saw the top of a tree that had to be 2.5, maybe 3 stories high. It's still there to this day. Sometimes I Google map, because Mike's apartment's gone. They tore it down and put a store there, but the apartment across the street is still there with the same tree. And I remember looking on top of that tree, and I guess it was around 7 o'clock. And then later on, I wake up, and my head is on the floorboard of my truck, and my knees are up on the seat. And I'm looking over, and I see my friend. I'll call him Jay, just to protect his identity for now. And I saw Jay there, and I'm like, Jay, wake up! I'm screaming, and he couldn't hear me. And at the time, I was a really good athlete. I could do 10 handstand push-ups and all that. So I pushed myself up, and I couldn't see anything out the window. It was all black. So I thought maybe somehow we ran into a lake or a river or underwater, because there was no light whatsoever we could see. And I finally got Jay to wake up, and oh my gosh, this is tough. This is always tough for me.
Damn, dude, this is interesting.
Yeah. And when, oh my God. So when Jay got up and looked, and the truck was on an angle like this. So we were like, when we pushed ourselves up, we fell against the windshield. And we still didn't know what was going on. We're only 16, 17. It's all dark out. We still don't know what's going on. And so Jay's asking me, what's going on? I'm looking out the window. I can't see anything. And I really think we're underwater. I thought we crashed underwater. And I happened to look down, and I saw this little teeny light. I go, what is that? So I'm thinking maybe down is up, and I'm looking at a star. I'm underwater, and maybe down below is a star. And then I saw a car driving with its lights on it. And I had a nervous breakdown. I'm going to be honest. I thought I was going to fall through the windshield. I was screaming. I was crying. Jay was screaming and crying. It was so. I really didn't think I was going to survive. And the thing that always made me wonder is if let's say it is aliens, because to me to be able to cope with this, I used to think that maybe the military was playing games with me. But man, this is hard to talk about. And thinking that you're going to fall through the window and die and all that, you start praying. You start screaming out, and you're begging for help. And so anyway, what happened was, it was a 1974 Datsun pickup truck. This was before it had Nissan. It was Datsun, and it had an all-metal dash. And from me being in such fear of falling through the windshield, I held onto the dash, and I literally pushed the whole dash up and bent it towards the windshield, inside the windshield. It was my father's truck.
Damn.
And yeah, I just destroyed it. And so anyway, we're like this, and we're screaming, and the truck's going down like this. But then all of a sudden, the truck leveled off like this, and we start going down to the ground. And I'm thinking, maybe we have a chance of surviving. And so it seemed like it took forever to touch that ground. And when I landed on the ground, we had no idea where we were. We didn't even know anything. But we landed between, there was a forest, a street, and houses. And so we figured, after we landed, I was excited to be alive. My friend Jay had a different experience than I did. And so anyway, I said to Jay, I'm going to get out of the car and our truck and go to the house and ask for directions to get out of here. I don't know, we don't know which way to go. And as I was walking to the home, Jay just starts screaming from the top of his lungs. It sounded like somebody was killing him. And so I went back to the truck, and he just said, don't leave me, don't leave me, don't leave me. He kept on repeating it, just crying, don't leave me, get in the truck, don't leave me, don't leave me. So I said, okay. So I got back in the truck, and we just started driving, and until we could recognize the street. And after a while, we realized we're only a few miles away from the area that it picked us up at. It's just the way it dropped us off. we were lost because back then there wasn't street lights on the particular street that we landed on. There was no street lights. There was only street lights on the main streets. And so we could have gotten home sooner, but Jay didn't want to go back past the place that we got. I always say zapped. It was like being zapped with the silver light. So we went to Jay's house, which I was living with him. His parents basically were taking care of me. And when we got home, his father answers the door, and his mother's behind his father, and his mother's just hysterically crying. And his father said, "Where were you?" And we didn't know what to say because, how do you tell someone? Because we still didn't think alien or anything.
Mm-hmm.
We were I didn't think military at the time. I didn't know what to think. I was still like in shock. And I didn't know what to say. And the father was, he was a hot-headed Italian. I'm half Italian, so I can say that. And he was screaming at Jay and everything. And I got nervous and I got scared. So I went home. I walked back to my parents' house and I just stayed at my parents' house. And the next day, I get a phone call from Jay's father and mother. They both were on the line. They called me, and they told me that Jay, I hate saying this, but it's true, and I want Jay to come on with me, but I can't. I'm trying to contact him, but Jay had a hard time, and he ended up in a mental institution for a while.
Damn.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And he was only like 18 or 19, and it was, he was older than me, but it was pretty bad. And it was really bad for him. I don't know what happened to him or anything, because my experience, to me, the only fear that I had was just falling through the windshield, but I think he remembered more than I did. And so his father, because his father is a politician and owns big businesses, and his sister works for the firearm tobacco, something like that, and his brother's a high-powered attorney down here. So they asked me to not tell anyone. So I didn't tell my parents for a long time because I was scared, because this is a very powerful family, and my parents are very poor, and Jay had problems, and I just kept my mouth shut. But so what happened was the way the father kind of said to me in a way, like, what happened was like very strange, and he believed us. He believed his son. I didn't tell his father the story. His son Jay told his father what happened, and he absolutely believed Jay. And I got so freaked out that I only had 3 months left of school to graduate high school, and I couldn't leave my house. I just could not leave. Because it happened in the daytime, and the same road leads to my high school. So I really had a hard time. And then Jay's parents asked me not to talk to him at all about this at all. And I think they wanted us not to be together because I think every time Jay saw me, he got flashbacks. So basically our friendship of like 15 years, I mean, we grew up together. We were kids together, babies together, just dissolved.
Have you ever reached out to him?
Yeah, well, when they put their house up for sale shortly after this, and the parents were already on the west coast of Florida, and I saw Jay, and so Jay and I took a trip in a truck. What's weird is he bought a Nissan truck, and Datsun and Nissan's the same company, and in almost the same color. I find that so strange, but anyway. He said to me, because what happened was he worked for Turkey Point, that's a nuclear power plant down here in South Florida, and he had a flashback there, and he lost his job. They said they found him in a fetal position, and again, I'm not saying anything that's not true. If Jay hears this, it's just what I heard. I heard it through mutual friends, family friends, and things like that. And I've always loved Jay like a brother. Love him even though I haven't seen him in 40 years. I really care about him and his family. They really were good to me. But so anyway, he said that he did hypnosis, I think, or he went to therapy. And he said, listen, he said, sometime, he said to me, because he was like an older brother, he said that it's probably better I don't know what happened. Because if you're not ready for it, it can be very uh, uh, damaging. And so what happened was I started getting flashbacks of just little things like, well, I had my first flashback, or I think no, my first flashback was when my son, when he was like 2 years old, 3 years old. I always had an open door policy. I always left my bedroom door open, so if my kids got scared at night, they can just come and jump in our bed. And, I've always been a kind of a loving father, and so my son had to be 2 or 3, I forget, but his head was really large for his body. He was going through that stage, and he wobbled when he was walking, and he came into our bedroom, and that was the first flashback of a complete panic attack. I had a panic attack right there. I just flipped out. But before I got married, I had already told my wife the story. I told her that one day I may have to seek therapy or find out what happened, because it's so devastating to me that it still affects my life. And I did eventually tell my parents. I told my sisters. I told my children when they were older about what happened. But that was my first flashback of seeing, I guess, alien type, the big head, small body. And then a few years after that, my children wanted to sleep outside, and it was cold outside. We live in South Florida, and I lived on a lake, and I have a swimming pool in my yard. And I was afraid that my children would sleepwalk or something and fall in and drown, so I said to them, I'll sleep out there with you. So, of course, in modern age, I bring out a long extension cord and a little TV, and we're watching a movie called Fire in the Sky or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it with my children. Now, I haven't told my children what happened. They were still too young to know about this. And they wanted to watch the movie, so they're watching it, and I'm laying there. I'm not even watching it, really. I'm just got my arm over my eyes, and I fall asleep. And what happened was my children said I had a complete panic attack, like a screaming maniac in my sleep. And I woke up the neighbors. Everybody came running, thinking something, that I was being attacked by an animal or something. And I had no memory of this at all. I did it in my sleep. And that's when I realized, I need to get therapy, because now I affected my children. I affected my older son twice, and now I affected my older son for the second time, my younger son for the first time. So I went to therapy. I had to get some type of...
Is your webcam or is your internet going really slow right now, or what?
No, I think it's okay now.
Okay. I could turn my webcam on. I thought it was my internet connection, but it was yours.
Yeah, it was definitely mine, because my roommates were running all through the house trying to get back on the internet.
Okay. That was an unexpected cutoff. I don't really know what happened. You're talking about your kids, and you're in a tent, and you're like, I decided I need to do therapy.
Yeah, we would just set out like sleeping, blankets to lay on and stuff. We're sleeping out in the open. We didn't have a tent in the backyard, but after I scared everybody with my screaming and kicking and my sleep and all that, I realized, because even my wife was saying, because I used to get up like every hour and check up on my children to make sure that they're still in their cribs, and I had babies, and I have a lot of children, and I just would panic, because what happened to me, I didn't want to happen to them. I never thought of that happening until I watched a darn a show. I think it was called Sightings, years ago, and someone talked about like third generation of abductees, and that really, after I heard that really put me into a paranoid mode where I started worrying about my children. So I did go to therapy. I did all that, and it did. To me, it didn't really help. And so anyway,
I think you'd benefit from regression because you're obviously at PTSD and you blocked out a lot of the horrible memories.
Yeah, my therapist tried to hypnotize me, and I think because I wasn't in the right place. I was still, at that time I was really scared. Now, I go out in the woods, daytime, nighttime, I go everywhere. But this is, this therapy was probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and I wasn't relaxed like I am now. Now I don't give a crap. I'm an old man, and so be it. But my children are adults, and that helps, because when your children are small, you don't want them to ever go through anything like this. And what's really strange is my father doesn't believe anything, but he believed me on this story. When I was a kid, I told him, he believed me because he saw what it did to me. I mean, who quits high school 3 months before graduation? I was on the football team. I was in 2 clubs. I did well in school. I mean, I really had a good life, and I just really fell apart after this. And my family just didn't know what to do for me. And I didn't tell them at that time. I told them later on when they asked me, what happened, because I used to work, go to school. I was an athlete. I was really, really put together at that time. So now, my wife, she's not very nurturing. And so she kept on saying, I'm tired of hearing about UFOs and all of this. And I understand. And so we were going to my son's baseball game. I'll never forget this. And I think it was between May 5th, May 9th, 1998 or 99. And this is, I'm going to just say it, Sunrise, Florida. And they have the largest Little League baseball in the country. They have more teams in Sunrise, Florida than any place in the country. And we're watching my son play baseball, and there's a field, this field that I'm watching my son, there's a field right next to my son's field. So there's 2 games at night. It's just turning dark. And this is, I think, May 5th to May 9th, around there, 98, 99. And I'm looking out across the Everglades, and I see this like cigar-shaped tube pumping water. I without exaggeration, I never want to exaggerate, because once you exaggerate, that's a form of lying. I want to be as honest as I can about everything I'm telling you. But it looked like it was pulling water up maybe over 5 stories high, over 50 feet high, pulling the water up into the craft. And I was the only one that saw it. So I pointed, I go, what is that? And you could hear everybody go, oh my God, oh my. Then I didn't say it. The other people said it. UFO. Oh my God, it's a UFO. And the cigar shape was like this, pumping the water. Then it leveled off like this, and it started coming right towards the baseball game. And there was a little Cessna airplane. And at the time I worked for the FAA. So there was a little Cessna coming over the field, and we thought the UFO and the Cessna was for sure going to crash. And I get my camera out, and I can't really see them much. I'm looking through that little cube that the cameras had back then. They didn't have the screens that they have today. And I'm just taking picture after picture after picture. Well, the umpire stops both baseball games, because now this thing is coming over the field, and everybody's panicking. So both baseball games, so you figure each baseball game has at least 50 to 100 people, because you have the children, the mother, father, all the relatives, and the park and all that. And they stopped both baseball games for fear of the kids who were going to get hurt from this UFO. And everybody's just flipping out in the park. Now, I work for the FAA, so I didn't want to report anything. I was kind of scared about that. And it never made the papers. It never made the radio. Nobody ever talked about it. But what's funny was, on the way to the baseball game, my wife kept on saying, there's no such thing as UFOs. I just can't believe them. And on the way home, she kept on saying, I never said that there was no such thing. And to this day, I'm separate. I divorced her years ago. We're still friends, and sometimes when we have, all my children get together, and I go down and I see my ex-wife, I'll stay with my ex-wife for a while. We always throw that in her face. I don't believe in. I didn't say that I didn't believe in UFOs. I just said that she changed her story completely, and I love that. I felt that was the universe validating, validating my story, and I really love that. But uh, that I think I saw maybe one other UFO other than that, and that's about it. But trying to get people to believe what you have seen and what you saw. I'll give you a great example. My mother passed away in my father's house, and and I was sitting there talking to my father, and this is daytime, and a glowing ball, orb, pulsating, was flying around his living room. I go, Dad, look at that, look at that. And he's just looked at me. He says, "So what? That's a ghost?" I go, "Well, it could be a spirit." He goes, "Yeah. Why can't it just be a ball of energy?" He goes, and then he looked at me with a straight face. And he goes, "I guess those little tornadoes of black smoke that manifest in the house is ghosts too." I go, "What are you talking about?" And it happened to him 2 times where this mist formed into his house, and he still will not believe in spirits.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so you can't. There's no way. There's no way you can change people's minds. And
Black
the thing
tornadoes.
yeah, like little black mist. I said, "Dad, that's mom. That's mom trying to talk to you." He goes, "Oh no, I don't believe that." So maybe he's afraid. I don't know, but he's a Marine. He's always been a Marine. Even though he's an old man now, he was always a tough guy.
So, with those flashbacks, what exactly did you see? Did you see like a flash of a creature, or?
The one flashback I had was the alien didn't look like the aliens that you see, like the grays that you see. It was a heavier set, and it didn't have a skinny neck, but instead of having big eyes, it just had blackness around its eyes. That's one flashback. That doesn't mean that's what I saw. It was just a flashback that I got. And another flashback that I got was I was being dragged on a floor that was like a honeycomb. It was like a beehive honeycomb, and they were dragging me on the floor for some reason I don't know. And that because I did some I did regression, but that's all I got out of it.
Damn.
And I don't know if that's true or not because I can't remember it with my this is hypnotherapy, and I always.
You know what we should do? I'll look this up and I'll mail you. But I'm going to research if there's a way to do self-hypnosis for regression. Maybe there is. You can do it to yourself.
And I really appreciate you letting me tell my story.
It's no problem, dude. Hey, I got a question about Cambodia.
Sure.
What kind of mythology do they have, like cryptids or whatever?
Oh, I forgot all about the story. I'm so glad you reminded me of that. Back in the war in the 70s, I'm pretty sure it was the 70s, Pol Pot, I think his name was. He was a dictator that took over Cambodia. And basically, if you wore glasses, you were killed. If you were intelligent, you were killed. He killed every doctor. Instead of letting people leave the country, he killed them. And they even have the concentration camp there. But I couldn't go there because when I would go, I lived not too far from there at one time, and I just get near that place, and the energy, I would just couldn't handle it. So I've never been there, even though I passed it 100 times. But he was really horrible, and he starved the people. And from what I learned when I lived in Cambodia, that people didn't eat spiders and bugs at one time, but when there was no food being imported and he took over all the crops and all that, people had to run to the forest to stay alive, and that's how they learned to eat anything. There's a joke that the only thing with 4 legs a Cambodian doesn't eat is a table and chair. But really, that's a sad joke because of what they went through and to survive. But my girlfriend set this up for me because she told me the story, and there's still people today that are alive, and they're probably my age. They're probably in their 50s and 60s because it was all children. But during the war, and I think this was North Cambodia, up there north near, like between Laos and Vietnam. I'm pretty sure, like the north, I want to say northeast, but I could be wrong. But it's between like Laos and Vietnam. my girlfriend was telling me that this spaceship came came down to Earth, and somehow it gathered many children, and it was like she told me the story, and then she had friends that experienced it, and they told me the story. And one person said it was like liquid glass, and or it was like a jellyfish in a way, where you couldn't see in, but I guess they could see out at times. I don't know, but the story goes that all the children that were in this bubble case that was absolutely from another dimension, or universe, or whatever, aliens, whatever, the children, after the war was over and the children were released, everybody was asking the children, "Oh my God, how are you so healthy? How are you? Where did you gain this weight? Where did you get food? And where did you get medicine or whatever?" I don't, know the whole story, but I met two people that were inside that bubble, and one lady that was telling the story, she started crying because she was so grateful, because half of her family was murdered, and these aliens or whatever captured these children. I don't know. I don't remember how the children got into this bubble. I don't know if it was abduction. I don't know, but I know that they're inside this bubble and protected, and they were fed, and they were sheltered. And one of the I don't know if it was the woman or the man that said that they could hear like the shells hitting, like they were shooting rockets or whatever at the bubble, because the soldiers didn't know what it was. Pol Pot's crew didn't know what it was, and there was a war going on, and they could hear it hit the bubble. And the children said that the beings were small like them, and the beings in the ship kept them busy. Like, I think they even grew food. They had played games or whatever. It was just an amazing story, and they were there for quite a while. It wasn't 1 or 2 days. These children were there, I think, for over a month. And that, to me, if anyone speaks Khmer and could investigate these stories, it's really amazing, and I really wish I took it more serious when I was able to speak with these people.
Alright guys, remember to submit any stories that you have that are interesting, anything strange or paranormal. I'm really interested in a lot of subjects. If you like the video, click like. If you don't like it, click dislike and subscribe. I'm going to keep producing more stuff. I have plans. I'm going to be traveling down to New York soon to hang out with the monk that I spoke to in a previous interview, and he's going to introduce me to Bigfoot. I mean, like, face-to-face encounters. We're going to go out and meet them. He's friends with them, and hopefully, due to my shaman ancestry, I'll have better luck than some other people with actually encountering them. So for the next few months, I'm going to intensify my meditation practices, hopefully heighten the odds of them showing themselves while I'm there. And also this summer, I have plans on going to a place called the Devil's Door here in Nome, where I live. Cave or a doorway in a rock face that if you go into it, you never come out. And I'm thinking it might be one of those portal places, or some kind of scary thing lives in there. But there's only one way to find out, and I'm going to find out firsthand. So I'll be filming. I'll go down there and bring my camera, check it out. Some people in a nearby village have found giant 10, 15 foot or larger even skeletons, like huge skulls. And so yeah, I got a lot of fun things and exciting things planned for this channel. Hopefully we get some amazing results with Bigfoot encountering soon. So stay tuned for more. There's a lot more to come. Kitavitvak, signing out.